They did not choose careful language. They chose a warning designed to travel. Touch our leader, and we burn your world. No safe bases. No protected corners. That is the message now coming out of Tehran, delivered while the country is bleeding internally and watching American threats pile up from the outside. This is not a rhetorical exercise. It is a line being drawn while the ground is already shaking. What happened here is relatively clear, even if the consequences are not. A senior Iranian military spokesperson, Abul Fazl Shekarki, publicly warned that any attempt by the United States to target Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would trigger a response that is neither symbolic nor limited. He did not speak in diplomatic abstractions. He spoke in terms of reach, retaliation, and regional exposure. The language was deliberate. Iran would not merely respond, it would make the response impossible to ignore. Because from Tehran's perspective, Washington has moved beyond pressure into existential signaling. Donald Trump's statements about Iran needing new leadership, combined with remarks recalled by Iranian officials about the country blowing up if something happened to him, are not heard as campaign rhetoric in the Middle East. They are heard as regime change talk. And in Iran's political memory, regime change is not a theory. It is a lived fear shaped by decades of sanctions, covert operations, cyber attacks, and direct military confrontation. This is where the analysis deepens. Iran's leadership insists this is not bravado. Shekarki made a distinction that matters in Iranian doctrine. Public statements are noise, actions are what count. But when threats stack up, words begin to function as actions. Tehran describes what it calls a permanent cognitive war against Iran, a blend of sanctions, propaganda, and military pressure meant to fracture the system from within. In that framework, even rhetoric becomes a weapon. And here is the shift that many outside observers miss. Iran is not warning after the fact. It is warning preemptively. The message is deterrence in its purest form. Violate even a corner of Iranian territory, and the response will come before Washington can control the escalation. This is not about winning a war. It is about denying the other side the illusion of control. On the American side, the timing could hardly be worse. These threats are landing in the middle of Iran's most severe internal crisis in years. According to the human rights activist news agency, more than 4,500 people have been killed, over 26,000 arrested, and at least 629 protests have erupted nationwide over the past 4 weeks. The streets are not calm. The state is not relaxed. And external pressure, instead of isolating the leadership, is being framed as gasoline on an open wound. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian made that equation explicit. An attack on the supreme leader, he said, is not a provocation. It is full-scale war. Not metaphorical war. Regional war. The kind that does not stay contained within borders or talking points. At the same time, the Iranian government is advancing its own narrative about the protests. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi argues that what began as peaceful demonstrations were hijacked by foreign and domestic terrorist actors. In an op-ed published in the Wall Street Journal, he claimed that U.S. rhetoric created incentives for mass violence, pushing the situation past a breaking point that others then exploited. From Tehran's view, Washington is not a bystander to the chaos. It is an accelerant. This brings us to a critical moment of interpretation. Iran repeatedly emphasizes that it showed restraint in June 2025. That restraint, Araghchi warned, was a choice, not a weakness. And choices can change. When he says Iran's armed forces would respond, with all their strength, to renewed attacks, that phrasing is not accidental. It mirrors the ultimatum-style language coming from Washington, reflecting it back with intent. If you are still following this closely, it is probably because you sense this is not just another cycle of threats. There is something structurally different happening here. The internal crisis, the external pressure, and the collapse of diplomatic trust are converging rather than offsetting each other. And this is where a question naturally emerges. Does external pressure actually weaken a state under internal strain, or does it harden it by validating the leadership's narrative of siege? Think that through, and then consider how often that assumption has been wrong in the past. Meanwhile, the human reality inside Iran continues to deteriorate. Internet blackouts have become routine. Journalist Elahi Mohammadi described fleeting VPN access windows of 30 minutes to an hour, used not for activism, but for something more basic, telling others they are still alive. She wrote of snow falling over Tehran, a city that smelled of death, where no one smiled. It is a small image, but it carries more weight than most press statements. Internationally, the UN Human Rights Council has announced a special session on Iran. But from Tehran's perspective, these forums are no longer neutral. They are seen as staging grounds for additional pressure, not pathways to de-escalation. While speeches are prepared in Geneva, U.S. military assets reportedly move closer to the region. The contrast is not lost on Iranian decision-makers. Iran insists it does not seek war for its own sake. Araghchi repeated that diplomacy remains preferable, even in critical moments. But that preference has boundaries. It does not include accepting that Washington decides Iran's leadership. It does not include threats to erase an entire country. The proposal Tehran puts forward is stark in its simplicity: mutual respect or frontal collision. Before we reach the end of this analysis, there is a second, more uncomfortable question to ask. If Washington tests this warning, believing Iran is bluffing because of its internal turmoil, what happens if that assumption is wrong? History suggests miscalculation is rarely punished immediately, but it is always punished eventually. What we are left with is a situation with no easy exits. Iran is internally wounded but externally defiant. The United States is escalating rhetorically while positioning militarily. The winners, if this spirals, will not be the people in the streets of Tehran or the soldiers stationed across the region. The losers will be predictable even if the trigger is not. This is not just about Iran and the United States. It is about whether threats replace diplomacy entirely and whether pressure becomes indistinguishable from provocation. The warning from Tehran is now on the table. What comes next depends on whether Washington hears it as noise or as a boundary. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're tracking the evolution of this story day by day. Make sure to activate notifications and don't miss our next report. And remember, you can now become a channel member. If you believe in this project and want to see it grow, your support makes all the difference. If you'd like to support our channel financially, which we greatly appreciate, you can do so through Patreon and PayPal. The link is in the video description.